And you're on.
So good to see you all. Many of you I've met in the past, some of you I haven't, but it's been busy. As Alita mentioned, we have finally, after all the years, located a place in our department that we can get prepared for doing some processing. It's been a long journey. Alita asked me to mention how this ever started, but I started, 15 and a half years ago with the department, and within a year or so ended up getting into the kitchen, working as a cook, and almost immediately really wanted to try to see if there was a way that the department could try to get some kind of a processing place to take advantage of many of what's already been mentioned this morning, these B grade products or leftovers, or stuff that just plain might be in good shape but couldn't sell, and really didn't have much success the first few years. Eventually, a little over, about 9.5 years ago, I became the food service manager, and at that point was able to really make more changes and make more decisions, and started using a lot of these items. We would actually do a lot of the work for many years right in the kitchen, and actually right up till today, that's the way we've had to do it, just because of HACCP and different problems with you know we had some incidents where we did a little more than we were supposed to, and Health and Human Services, who is in charge of checking on places, ended up making us stop some of those things. And so really tried to work to get a place that we could actually do this under the regulations that were needed. And we had a place in the budget that we were going to build a building at Mountain View, and we had like $1.5 million in the budget to get this done. And probably 6 months later, it was pulled from the budget just because of financial needs in the department. Went on a few more years, found a location at Maine Correctional Center that was already a building that was there. But when you're in state government, it's very difficult because you have to get engineers within the state involved, and something that probably should have been $1.5 million ended up being changed to about 6 million by the time these engineers were done, and the department felt there was no way that they could do that. They ended up just saying, we're not going to be able to do this. Until about a year and a half ago, I noticed that the industries building, that the industries portion of our building at Mountain View was really not being utilized. We had there's a medium security building, and then there's buildings that are part of the minimum facility, and there were industries, woodworking and things that were taking place in both of those. And in the medium facility, it was really not being utilized. And so I reached out to the warden and to the commissioner and just said, look, we've been looking for a place for a long time. There's a loading dock right off of this. There's good access. We already have plenty of electricity in there for all the equipment that's being used or not being used, actually. And there was water, sewage, all the things that we would need. And because it was already there, we found we could bypass having to get the engineers involved in this, and it would save, you know, well, it would probably save millions of dollars. And so they agreed. We cleaned it out. The equipment was moved to Maine Correctional Center, to the Women's Center, to set up a woodworking operation that they hadn't had themselves. And we put in for a few grants. We're able to get an equipment grant. We've got a walk-in freezer, walk-in cooler coming. We have another part of another building outside where we're going to have our wash facility that things will be brought in, putting in a leach field for that with a dry well situation and leach field to be able to take care of the water from all the washing and preparing of these vegetables to come in and be processed. And one of the reasons that we did this is because with the situation we've had in the past with PFAS and all the things with our septic, we had to go to the point of actually trucking all of our waste in like trailer truck tank trucks to Dover. And so any extra water that would go into the system in a processing place can be substantial. It was decided that since we had an opportunity to build this leach field and do this outside in another building, that part's been separated. And then most of the preparing and things will happen inside of this facility. So this is something that we wanted to see for a long time so that we could prepare vegetables and fruits for use in our kitchens. One of the things that we've found over time, we've encouraged other kitchens to do more of these same things we had done at Mountain View, but there's definitely different levels that people are comfortable with, and there many are not comfortable actually processing and doing the things that we do to the level that we do it at Mountain View. And so to have a place where we could actually take these local foods, some that we produce, some that other farmers produce, and turn them into a product that could be already packaged, much like what we would get from Cisco or another vendor, we're hoping will make a big difference in the amount that's used and consumed and the difference it'll make on the plate at these other facilities in our department. I guess if anyone had any questions, I'd be open to take them. If there's anything that I could describe any better.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, we do have a couple minutes. Probably could answer two questions if anybody has
I will
want to.
say one more
Yeah.
thing just while people are preparing their question. What we're going to do is we're going to have eventually a hood system in there, and one side of that line will be more kettles and things that we can prepare vegetables and things with a blast chiller that we could end up getting, vegetables ready to be shipped in that way. On the back side of that line, we're going to put in some commercial ovens and make that a bakery side of it, because we're also, with all that we've done at Mountain View using Maine grains and those type of things, we're going to try to do the bagels and English muffins and all the things that we do and actually send those out to the other facilities so that they can utilize that product.
Yeah, so exciting. I just love this concept of like a central kitchen where you can process and prepare food and send it out to the institutions. Tony, go for it.
Yeah, I just had can you hear me okay through the
Yes.
thingy? Great. Yeah, just some questions about like what sort of volume you're thinking this could replace of like product you're buying in versus product that could be produced in-house, and um what sort of items you're looking at. Like, are you going to keep it kind of tight, or are you going to try to be experimental with the variety? Just that kind of thing.
Well, we're definitely going to be experimental. And our goal is to replace as much of those items that we are like, okay, we've bought broccoli from Melissa. We're not going to try to take away from anything that we can already get, but items that we have to purchase from Cisco or one of these places. Cisco happens to be our prime vendor for the state. So anything that we can do to make these items more usable year round, in Maine, we try to do a good job to purchase as much as we can from people at all times of the year. We've had as high as a 42, I think it was 42.8 one year that we had for a spending amount for our budget. And that's substantial, but we're looking to do as much as we can for things that would be not only fresh packed, but to be able to be frozen, that we could spread that out throughout the year. So, and we've also had, we've all had a policy that it's not, anything in stone, but that we would seek to donate 20% of what we grow personally. And so if there was a way to process some of that to go to food pantries and things like that, then we would, it would give us more opportunities to help them in ways that it's easier for them to get items in the midst of the season. And if we could do some of ours and pass some of that along to them. We also have food pantries that actually are now paying for us to make bread for them at a very low cost, but we do it to help them out. And so with this type of system, we hope to be able to increase what we would do in that kind of thing to, we don't give it to them, they pay us, but it basically covers all our cost and helps with the education of our apprenticeships to be able to do this. So.
Thank you, Mark. Melissa, I see your hand, but I think maybe we can roll into our panel, and definitely, I know I've got questions for you, Mark, but we can save them till the end when we have our open discussion and breakout time. Thank you again, Mark. I can't not put this link in the chat to the Seeds of Change documentary about the Department of Corrections farm and food system operation up in Charleston, Maine. So really recommend you checking that out if you haven't seen it, or if you have. I've seen it 3 times and I find something new and delightful in it every time. So thanks again, Mark. And I will transition over into our panel. Want to introduce our panelists. Today we have Pauline Donlin from Liberation Farms and Somali Bantu Community Association. We have Ben Slayton with Harvest Maine, Melissa Persico. I've got to get the accent on that right, Melissa. I'm still learning. With Harvesting Good, Doug Klopp with Maine Farm and Sea Cooperative and the Second Harvest Partnership, and Mark McBride, who I already introduced, but Mark, please feel free to chime in about use of B grade and surplus crops in your production as well. So thank you all panelists for joining us this morning. I'm going to kick us off with a prompt for everyone. Would love to just go around and hear from you all a little bit about yourself, your business, and what led your business or organization to work with these surplus or imperfect crops. So, anyone feel ready to kick us off, or should I call on you?
I'll go first. I'm happy to
Yes.
introduce myself. Thanks for having me here. My name's Ben Slayton with Harvest Maine, and this is my first time joining this working group, and it's been fascinating so far. I really loved hearing all that Mark had to share. So Harvest Maine started about 3 years ago. It's just myself and my business partner, Matt Chappell. And we came together with the idea that we wanted to work with the local farm community to try to address some of the food waste that's going on farm. And we're curious about whether there may be a market-based solution if we could come up with a product or a suite of products that could make use of some of these seconds or blemished, misshapen Sometimes it's just overstock. But we started about 3 years ago with a veggie spread, 3 different flavors. So hopefully you've seen them in the marketplace. And then just recently, this past spring, we launched a second line of products called Pummies. It's a dried fruit snack where we use apple pumice, which is the remains from apple cider pressing. Often gets composted or thrown away, but it makes a great base for our dried fruit snack that we then flavor with blueberry and strawberry seconds for one flavor. And then we also have an apple pie flavor where we add some cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice, and it's like taking a little piece of apple pie on your hike. So that's a little bit about Harvest Maine. I don't know how in depth I should go. I'm happy to talk more about our kind of kitchen process, or I can wait until we talk more about that. I'll take your lead, Elena.
I was mute. Thank you, Ben. That's great for now. Yeah, definitely interesting to hear about your sort of orientation towards a market-based solution for this huge food waste problem. All right. Does anyone want to follow that up?
I'll go.
Yeah.
Melissa Persico. I am the general manager of Harvesting Good. What we do is we process 1,000,000 pounds of broccoli. And as you know, with processing, you're going to have some yield that you need to work with that it's not going to be to spec of what you need for your USDA grade product. Actually, Ben, we work with Ben. He has an amazing guacamole that they make over there with our broccoli. Prior to that, I also ran procurement at Native Maine Produce, where we worked with over 100 local farms and producers. And yeah, I tried my best to get seconds in there, and I plan to talk about that on why it was difficult. So yeah, that's me. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa.
I can go. Sorry, I'm a little sick, but I'm Colleen Donlin. I'm the markets manager at Liberation Farms, which is part of the Somali Bantu Community Association. So there's a few different programs, but the one relevant to this conversation is our Iskashido program, where it's commercial farming program. We have 10 groups of farmers, all Somali Bantu farmers. 3 farmers are in each group, so 30 farmers total, and they each have a third of an acre plot that they farm. I'm the markets manager, so I coordinate all the behind the scenes market and admin. So when produce is ready to harvest, we aggregate everything in our wash and pack station and sell to markets all under Liberation Farms. And it's always been a major priority of the farmers and the organization to distribute produce grown at Liberation Farms to low-income communities, and especially the Somali Bantu community. So ever since we started, we've been sending produce to the Somali Bantu Community Association's office and community center in Lewiston. So mostly surplus produce and some seconds. And then as we've grown, we've found funding to actually pay farmers for the produce that we send to the office and community center and to other organizations. Mostly all first quality, and then we send some seconds to the office, and we pay farmers a lower price for the seconds. And then our first major tomato buyer was Portland Public Schools, and they were only able to pay us a lower cost below our wholesale price. So we were able to send them seconds, tomatoes, or just like some blemishes because they were turning it into marinara. And then that relationship scaled to Marinara Collaborative with Doug, and so we were able to fit into that program really nicely since we were already selling tomatoes for marinara to Portland Public Schools.
Thank you, Colleen. Doug, this seems like a great segue to an introduction from you.
All right. Hi, my name is Doug, and I work for the Maine Pharmacy Cooperative. Melissa, we're going to start off by saying congratulations. I noticed the name change. So congrats. So what led Maine Farm and Sea to work with seconds? It is part of our mission of change, or our theory of change, which is farm and sea to institution, with the belief that institutions have the purchasing power to really move the dial
Hello.
when it comes to, pardon?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Is my audio okay?
Yeah,
Yep,
no, you're
we
fine.
had a
Somebody came off the
Okay,
door.
I had to switch to Scott's laptop because mine went into an open rebellion about 10 minutes before it started today. So, so thanks. I'm on a borrowed laptop this morning. So yeah, the theory of change is farm to institution, but also I think it's about kind of trying to do good and trying to make use in a very kind of New England frugal manner about cutting out waste. We all know the statistic: 30% of everything grown on a farm in Maine never leaves the field, and it's perfectly good, nutritious, and usable. So the Maine Marinara Collaborative came out of this working group about 4 years ago with Ron Adams and HCCA with Renee and Sam Miller from Maine Food Group to apply to a Kendall Innovation Award, and we were able to get it. Um, the thing about working within profit is yeah, just as Ben said, the same theory. How can we make something that is good and nutritious from something that would have gone necessarily to waste? So that's a key thing. The other thing is to always be farmer centric or farmer forward. And Colleen mentioned it that we purchase a fair amount of our Roma tomatoes from Liberation Farms. We commit to 30% BIPOC purchases for our products. Um, so the other piece of it is really creating new revenue streams for Maine farmers. And I think that's an exciting piece of this. I think the third piece is that when you're competing or when your market is institutional buyers, you're competing against Cisco. You're competing against very large corporate industrial food producers that are buying tomatoes at 35% a pound out of California. So by purchasing off grades, we can bring the price point down for our inputs. Not dramatically, but enough. And with the kind of reimbursements from the Department of Ed and formally from the USDA, combined with the missions of many institutions to achieve a 30% goal by 2030, it all just kind of fit together in a very natural way. Right now, we're working to diversify our product base. We're like on similar tracks with Ben in realizing that, and I'm here at Fork Food Lab, which is where the pumice was processed, right down the corner here, with Scott, who's done a wonderful job working with that equipment under the Second Harvest Partnership. Um, but really, it's kind of like when they say triple bottom line or quadruple bottom line. I think a lot of the work around upcycling and what we're trying to do to create products really fits all of that. So it's how do you do good by doing good for your organization.
Totally. Thank you, Doug. Thank you all. Mark, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, as far as we've been involved in the Maine Marinara, probably one of the, I think,
First customers.
we've used quite a bit of it. Let's just put it that way. And so it's something that we have wanted to support, and we try anytime we can to make use of these type of things. So.
Right.
I
And
think
originally, there was an arrangement made with DOC and Maine Marinara Collaborative to both grow and receive finished product. Is that right?
Yes, we wanted to make sure that we didn't take away from any farmers that were going to be able to, so we basically were kind of there if needed. We would be glad to do any of that, but wanted to make sure that we didn't take anything away from another farmer whose occupation was being affected.
So if I may, Alita, just respond to that with two things. We've been working for many years, and it finally happened with Mavis at Exo. The University of Maine system came on board this year as a purchaser of Maine marinara. We're starting out with a pilot, but they have ordered 800 cases. As you can imagine, the UMaine market is substantial. So, my goal, and I hope with everybody here, is in the next 3 years, we could really go to scale. If we can bring on the UMaine system, not just for marinara, but for all of the products that are represented here, in kind of a suite of product sales, I think we can just continue to increase the amount of product we buy from farmers and increase the amount of farmers across the state who participate in this program and all of our industry or all of our work. I think the other important piece about what we do is creating a closed loop economy that keeps the money in the state of Maine. From farm to local processor to local distributors like Colleen and Native Maine, to local institutions. And I think that's something that we always could keep in mind, is that as we grow what we do collaboratively, we're actually starting to build an economy that is closed looped, that is here in the state of Maine.
You're here. All right, I'm going to move on to our next question. I'm really excited about this one, to hear what you all have to say. So when you talk about seconds or surplus or imperfect crops, what do those terms mean to you? And then also, what have you learned about how your customers respond to those types of words? What kind of messaging has hurt or helped your sales when trying to convey what you're trying to do in the food system with these surplus products?
I think we should go back to Ben.
Sure, I was just unmuting myself. I'm happy to
Perfect.
start off. Thanks, Doug. Well, it's interesting. About 3 years ago, when we started, the term upcycled was being bandied about a bit. But when we were doing our work out in the marketplace, a lot of customers were kind of scratching their head at it. And just in the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a lot of demos as we're in the full holiday season, and we're trying to take advantage of the shoppers. But it's been amazing to me how many people are now fully comprehending what that word means, why it's important, using it back to us. So I just feel like in my short time of being in this field, upcycled has become a term that the marketplace is embracing, which I think is great. And I'll back up a little bit and say that, I say I've been in this field for the last three or 4 years. What brought me into it actually was my first job in the food system, which was a whole animal butcher, where, our desire to try to make use of the whole animal was necessary, because we were paying farmers a fair price for the whole thing. And, wasting any of it was not economical for us. And so that's where I really started to learn and appreciate this whole concept of the New England frugality that Doug speaks of. But we got to use the whole thing and make it work. And then that led me, once that I moved on from that line of work to want to continue to work with the farm community, because it's not just about making an effort to reduce waste. It's like problem solving or opportunity grabbing, and working with the farmers and finding out what it is that is slipping through the cracks within their system. And every farm's a little different. For some farms, sorting is certainly towards the end of the season, sorting product is a time suck and labor intensive. And they started saying, if you could just take the whole field, we'll just harvest everything and ship it over. That was a great way for us to boost up our quantity of material as we were scaling up. So I think of it more as problem solving, and upcycled is just where the opportunity is.
Go next. If I was to talk about what seconds, I think there's a big difference between seconds and surplus. I think that in people's mind that seconds are going to be your misfits, and surplus is you just have extra product. I think that some of the difficulties that you see, especially with customers, is they might have specific specs that you can't meet, and that's going to be sometimes with just your ungraded product, right? Like, so say you're a school and you sell apples and they want like 125 count apples and your apples aren't 125 count, right? Like, these are little things that even though it's not a second, it's still going to come off as, because it doesn't have that spec that's needed, the customer's going to have some issues with it. I also think that it's important to know like what their final application is. Are they processing it? Are they using it for a salad bar? Because that's definitely going to put you in the right direction of where, where it's going. But I think also just the biggest thing is coming from the distributor point of view is that sometimes you'll get seconds that are amazing. You're like, oh, this is great. And then sometimes you get some that you're like, you just using me to be your compost, So I think that that's really important coming from that point of view, is making sure that you're very transparent on what your product is, what it looks like, and what the final application is going to be. And I think that that can really fine tune kind of who the last mile customer will be.
Yeah, going off of that, our customers are like Doug, Marinara, and Portland Public Schools. We don't deal as much with like the end consumer. Um, but I think we've done a good job, and Marinara's done a good job of really spelling out what the different grades are and what the quality standards are. In like the RFP and the contract. And also, I think Doug's been developing materials that have photos as well. That's really helpful since I'm working with like 30 different farmers, most who are not fluent in English. And we tried to really talk a lot about quality and the highest quality possible. So it can be a little confusing when all of a sudden we're like, well, this market can actually take a little bit. Like a lesser quality product, but it still has to be like it can have maybe some blemishes, maybe a little bit of pest damage, but still has to be like okay to eat. So that can be hard for us to train farmers on that. So we just try to work with buyers like Marinara to really be transparent about what our product is and what they're looking for. And like Melissa said, it's really helpful to know what they're doing with the product if they're turning it into marinara, so that we can also use that to explain to farmers. So photos is really helpful, especially for our program.
Thanks, Colleen. And sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
No, I was just going to butt in and just kind of like on that, just like with your messaging, I think is like kind of selling it in a way, is kind of being like, if you look at it and it's like beautiful quality, but the specs just off, I think just saying like, oh, it's like the same quality, just different shape, But then, of course, if you have some that are like maybe not as great, then you'd kind of sell it more of like emphasizing the imperfections and why they're so good at using them for those applications. So,
yeah. If it's all right, Alita. Colleen, thanks. We are perfecting this. It's going to be on a phone app. We'll be rolling it out. One of our interns, Cynthia, put it together, and I've got a little bit more on the tech side, but there's no, we know that there's so many different languages, especially working with immigrant farms. There's, so there's a couple of issues with respect to like Liberation Farm and the farmers there cultivating community. It's simply kind of a this, not this, with pictures of tomatoes. Or whatever it might be. When we haven't talked about the Greens project yet, but like no, we can't take stems that are 12 inches long. It's a 2-inch stem, so it's this, not this, and you're literally going to be able to scroll through our ingredient list on a phone, so that we can distribute it to farmers or even harvesters who are working in the field who may not speak English or French. And so we found that this was just almost like a picture book of what we're looking for. Our baseline is like, we'll take 5, like if something comes here, small processing at Fork with Cultivating Community brings all their stuff here in batches. But with Liberation Farms, the same thing. And with any of our farmers, Jordan's, Belangers, when it comes to seconds, we have a 5% baseline. So if it's like again, to Melissa, don't bring me your compost and ask me for $1.75 a pound. And it happens, right? It happens. Um, so we have kind of an acceptance sign in. If it like we look at it, we weigh it in. If it's 5% or less, that's what we'll take. We'll suffer that loss in the secondary market. But as long as 95% of it is completely usable for what we're going to do with it, we'll take it all. So I also have learned that what's a second on one farm is not a second on another. You have to remember we have small farms, large farms, and medium farms. So if you're a really established farm and you've been around for 7 generations, your version of a second might be different than someone starting out. So that's another piece to kind of consider, and we should be flexible with that. Um, I think the other thing we didn't talk about again is like the greens and upcycling stuff. I think the first time that Penny Jordan said to Rick Belanger, "We'll take 1,000 pounds of Brussels sprout crowns," I think he fell off his tractor because he was like, "What for? What?" And we told him that we were blending them in with cauliflower leaves and broccoli and kale for a frozen product. And, we tested that product out and it was super well received. We used that in the school meals program with the African recipes in South Portland, Westbrook, and Lewiston. There's also kind of some other pieces to think about, not just seconds, but things that we have just have thrown away. Brussels sprout crowns. Who knew? Who knew that cauliflower leaves can be blended in with collards and it's the same consistency, nutritional content, and taste profile? What I've also learned that I was interesting at Colby, some of the students at Colby were like, upcycled? Do you mean like rotten? Ew, I don't want to taste that. And that was kind of interesting. I think when Abby and Scott and I do a lot of tabling, we always kind of start with that preface of that 30% quote, which I think shocks people. And then when you say it's completely nutritious, and they say, well, why? And I say, well, the American consumer for 50 years has been marketed to that you must buy the perfect tomato for $3.99 a pound. That's not how produce 30 years ago was in this country. When you say something like, we want to give the curly carrot a good home, that kind of resonates with people, at least from our experience. So I think it's how you talk about upcycling so people don't think like it's like somebody's leftover clothes that went into a bin and is now in a sock, is important.
Yeah. So interesting. And I feel like may vary on customer or audience. Like I'm hearing Ben say that he sees like upcycled being really embraced by his consumers, and you, Doug, saying that it takes some education with a lot of the folks that you're trying to reach with this. And I love the direction, the rabbit hole we just went down around standards and grading and how that's kind of like a Wild West situation. All right. In the interest of time, I am going to move on to our next question. This one is for producers. So I'm curious, what are the key pieces of information that a buyer needs to commit to purchasing imperfect or surplus product? So price, volume, consistency, grade, packaging, communication. What are those key pieces that really need to be highlighted when making those transactions?
Yeah, I can start. So yeah, we're mainly working with people who are like purposely buying seconds, like marinara. So basically, our contract is like anything you would normally have with just an emphasis on figuring out what the quality and grade is. I think that's the most important piece for us. Um, and then also the price. In a lot of these projects, we're confined by like grants for pricing or obviously what they're able to sell the end product for. So it's kind of contingent on what the buyer is able to pay. But then in my role, it's my job to advocate for the farmers and make sure we're getting a fair price because even though it's seconds or surplus, they're still spending a lot of time and care for all the produce. So I would say quality and price are the two that stand out the most to figure out with buyers.
I can go next. I think a big thing is that in our heads we think that because it's upcycled byproduct that it has no cost, that it's free. And that's just not true, because a lot of times gleaning sometimes is more labor is required, right, than if you were just like farming regularly. Same thing with processing. So like I might have 100,000 pounds of dust available, but again, there's labor that goes into if you needed it packaged into a box and all these things. So I think sometimes just sharing that information with buyers. I think another thing that's important is keeping your eye on what the market value for product is. So you can, and not just like in the Boston market, right? We're looking at like, what is that wholesale price that you can, that brokers are buying stuff for across the country? Because sometimes your byproduct may not necessarily sell here, but it could sell out in, say, New York State or, somewhere else. So I think just kind of being able to pivot, but pricing is really important because again, you want to get your product out there, even at, if it's a second, because it's not just good for your farm, it's good for everyone. But if the cost is becoming too high, then farmers are going to say, screw this, I'm not doing this anymore. You know what I mean? Or they're just going to sell it to a pig farmer, whatever it is. So I think that there has to be some sort of like symbiotic relationship where I think that the buyer has is not just money focused. It has to be more that they're also aligned with their values as well. I don't think as a state we're really there yet. And I can kind of talk about that when I was at Native Maine, especially if you're a distributor and I wanted to do a seconds program so bad. And I had schools and other people that were interested in it. But you have to remember that a lot of these distributors have very small, like they don't have enough space. So if you already have one code for like an heirloom tomato and then you get a second heirloom tomato, think about the labor. They have to set up a new code. They have to figure out a slot for it, right? And then from there, God forbid, one of the nice restaurants in town, they mispick it and send the seconds for, so there's a whole lot of weariness, I think, around distribution. So I think that if you were to sort of line up a customer base, if I was a farm or a processor, like, lining up that customer base ahead of time so that what if the distributor was to help you with that it's an in and out product, right? That it's not something that's sitting on a shelf, because this can't be something that sits on a shelf, because usually it's going to have a much shorter shelf life than your normal product. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And Melissa, would you mind just backing up and sharing? I'm not sure that the folks here got like the full picture of what it is that you do and like examples of how you have used your byproduct.
sure. Yeah, so at Harvesting Good, we process 1 million pounds of broccoli. We actually bring in about 1.5 million pounds, and we process, in the end, we get about 1 million pounds. So this year we did close to a 68% yield, which was really good. But again, this comes down to how are you processing things? We learned that if we had purchased the product, the broccoli already floreted in the fields, we would have actually saved money in the processing and had less byproduct, right? So I think that there's a whole line down of your processes on whether you're at the farm level or the processing level, or the distribution level of, there's a special way of doing things that's going to be different than if you were doing your normal product. So yeah, so we have a ton of byproduct. For instance, I had someone outside of Vegas that was interested in buying 5 truckloads, but it cost me $6,000 to get the product there. So even though my price was right, the freight wasn't. So, there's a lot of things that you're going to tackle, especially when you're coming to, again, the minute you are lowering your product, it's sort of like you start competing in, if I was in retail, you're going from like Gucci to like Walmart, it's like you're dealing with a whole different base of people as well. And I think that what's really important is making sure that you have something in writing, because you don't want to send a truckload to somebody and then have them refuse it and send it back, right? Like, so there has to be some sort of like meeting in the middle. And you know, I think it's really important to have that in writing of like, you know, this is the spec, this is what you know what the product's going to look like, even have pictures, but then also coming back saying, you know, if it's an 80-20, 20% is going to be crap, right? Like, and I think being honest and transparent with your buyers is really important, because if they see one bad thing, they're like, oh, I'm not, they're all like that. And it's like, no, I actually have some yield there, that I have some grace to not have all perfect products. So
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it goes back to that like need for values alignment between all the supply chain actors, right? Like we're buying this awesome broccoli from Maine, and kind of like getting behind that story. I just heard you say the word dust, and I was like, maybe people don't know what broccoli dust is.
And that's the thing, it's called pieces. And I learned that, you know, just from talking to brokers in California, right? Like everyone has a different language. So I think that that's another thing that's important too, is like making sure that you're speaking the same language. So if that means you have to change the verbiage in your in like your spec sheet or whatever it is, like I would recommend doing that, so that you have the less questions and the less pushback you have. Because again, anytime you're doing something that's out of the box, the second it becomes a little complicated, people are like, shut it down. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. So I think that making sure that you're making it as user friendly as possible, and, you know, very hospitable in the process as well, because it's not going to be perfect. Produce isn't perfect. I don't care if you're selling grade A stuff, it's still not perfect, right?
Yeah,
So
it's a tough business.
yeah.
Perishables. Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that, Melissa. Did anyone else want to speak to this prompt about what are the key pieces of information that you've found necessary in a transaction?
I think something that several have mentioned, it kind of goes back to the last portion and this portion, is that if you were to, whether it's Colleen or Ben or Doug or Melissa or myself, if you're going to be successful in this whole situation, I think one of the most important things is to be flexible. And you know, we often, just to go back quickly and talk about the fact of, you know, with the differences in seconds or, you know, overages or whatever, often it's just having a relationship with the people that are out there. And you may not talk to them within, you know, for 3 or 4 months, but if they know you're flexible and they know that there's a good chance if they called you because they have something they can't sell, it really works out very well for both people. With mushrooms, we set something up, you know, almost 9 years ago, and we're able to get first quality mushrooms, but because say Cisco tells that person that all of a sudden this week we don't need 4,000 pounds, we only need 2, and if it was the farmer saying they were only going to give 2, they'd be in trouble. But when some of these people like Hannaford and Shaw's and things, they can do that to their vendors, and it gives us an opportunity. And all I'll say is, if you're going to set up these type of relationships and work in this collaboration, you may have to take things that you aren't convenient for you at that moment. But if you're willing to work in that, the people usually in both cases are going to be very flexible and give you opportunities and deals that you wouldn't otherwise get. And that's allowed us, we wouldn't be buying mushrooms, organic mushrooms, you know, for what would have cost $12 a pound in a correctional setting, but we do that 3 or 4 times a year and take care of putting them away so that we have them, and it gives us a great opportunity. But I think that flexibility, you can't always be just one way.
I just want to real quick say too, is that if you're selling to a processor, processing equipment is very specific. So again, you may have the most beautiful product ever, but if it's not sized to fit into their equipment, it's not going to work. And then you're adding more labor that they're going to either have to like cut it or whatever it is. So just remember that as well, that spec is important, specifically when you're talking to processors. Because again, if it doesn't work through the equipment, they're gonna send it back.
Yeah. I think Alita too, and for the group, if you're a producer, Ben, Melissa, or myself, you're a buyer and you're a seller. And it's two sides of the overall equation, but on the buyer side, it's what we've talked about, consistency of seconds, price point, quality, logistics, right? Can you get them to the processor on the day you said you'd get them there? So a thing we haven't really touched upon is kind of the logistics in the middle of the chain. As a seller, it's quality and consistency on delivery. And like Mark, I think in the first year, our processor tried to do us a favor by saving us some money on some boxes that probably weren't the quite. Melissa's smiling because she knows where this is headed, and so does Mark. So how many cases can you stack of marinara on a pallet and ship it to Native Maine or Peak Source? And wow, so you had some leftover boxes from a previous customer and you thought they were going to be the spec. That's great. You wanted to save us some money. But by the time they got to Mark, the cases in the middle had imploded upon the weight. Now we've got to credit all of that. But I think the other thing with working with this group is that, which is different than maybe kind of the cutthroat world of food producing, is that we trust each other. So shit happens, accidents happen, humans happen, right? And anywhere along from field to plate, eventually, anything on that train goes wrong for whatever reason, it creates a problem that needs to be put out or fixed or adjusted. And, we had something happen. And again, it's not finger pointing. It happens in all industries. The first lot of our cases to USM, and I wasn't sure, eight cases were below quality. But when you're like getting a new contract and it's big and the first cases they open up aren't what they sampled. Now, as it turns out, of the 160 cases, it was only 8. Now, on the percentages of processing, that's well within margin. But kind of that first impression matters. Can you deliver quality and consistency that you said you were going to do as a producer or a seller? Can you meet and be fair and honest with your farmers that you're buying from? But the thing that I think keep in mind is as we move forward as a group is that everybody here and everybody that we're going to do business with wants to do the right thing. And something will eventually go wrong. And what's been wonderful about working with this group, I can pick up the phone to Melissa, Mark can call me, I can call Sam Miller, and at least we can like get on it and course correct and fix it. And again, not with a lot of angst or finger pointing. It's just an acknowledgement that what we're trying to do is not easy.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug.
So have a little grace and afford grace to others.
I love that. Ben, wanted to give you the opportunity to respond to this if you wanted to.
Sure, I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made, which is why I was keeping quiet on it. But I will say one thing, like Doug mentioned logistics and Mark mentioned logistics too. I think one thing that's challenging for us sometimes, I understand that a lot of the transactions that we've been talking about are kind of like, okay, I've got this quantity of seconds, make a phone call, get it moved, get it to where it needs to go and process pretty quickly. In our business, we are trying to plan for a production year. We've made estimations on how much we're going to sell month by month, and we know what quantity of material we're going to need in order to make that amount over the next 12 months. And so talking to a farmer and asking them to try to anticipate how many pounds of blemished peppers they're going to have puts us in a tricky position, because we don't want to root for the farmers to have blemished produce. We want them to have perfect produce so they can get top dollar for it. But inherently, it will happen. and some farmers have even started keeping records of each crop, what percentage am I not able to sell at top level, but I know I can move it into these other markets because now we've established relationships. But it's been tricky for us to kind of like plan for, because we get peppers maybe from 6 different farms, and if they all have good years, bad years, depending on how you want to look at it, of blemished peppers, we might end up with 100% more peppers than we need. And so to Doug's point, being flexible, being ready to take more than you need one year. Fortunately, we have a freezer we can stockpile, but I didn't know if other, I don't know how the Marinara project works and manages how much tomato they need. But if other people have figured out how to kind of balance and prepare for the unknowns.
Oh, yeah, go for it, Melissa.
I was just gonna say, this isn't involving produce per se, Ben, but I know that, for instance, like with certain cheesemakers, like Milk House, for instance, like every single batch that they are gonna have a yield that comes out of it that they don't use. So they'll end up making that into a cheese, like whether it's curds or whatever, that you can sell for a discounted price to like schools. So again, like I know it's different than produce, but sometimes like if they're already selling to a producer or whatever it is, or if they're already selling to the market and it's just like you're kind of not, they have first refusal and then you're just kind of like, whatever's left, I'll take, So sometimes you'll end up getting probably, it's sort of like the meat market, like depending on the volume and what's sale, what's going for sale at that moment. Sometimes you'll get prime steaks for the cost of, regular steak, a regular choice steak. So, and it's the same thing with produce. So I, not to follow around the trucks heading to the market or anything, but sometimes that just that can work.
Right.
Awesome. Okay, I'm keeping an eye on the time here. So I think what I'd love to do next is if you were following along on the agenda, you might have seen a preview for this. We at the Local Food Processing Infrastructure Work Group love getting to know each other a little bit better here, talking about, reflecting on what we've just learned. So we're going to break out into some groups and have a brief reflection time about what you've heard from our panelists today. And then we're going to bring it back and if you have a question that came out of your breakout group for our panelists, we can ask them at that time. So I'm going to create the waiting, the breakout.
I got it. I'm ready, Alita.
Oh my gosh, Annie, you're so good. Awesome. And let's spend 6 minutes in our breakout rooms, and panelists, you're welcome to hang back in the main room and take a breather. Sound good? Okay. See y'all back in 6 minutes.
And I just put a couple prompts in there for folks. You can see like what's resonating with you, and one collective question for a panelist or the full panel is maybe something you want to come out with it. And here are the rooms. Just press the button. There should be 3 or 4 people per room. And if no one else is in your room, come on back to the big room.
Hey, Mark, I have some broccoli for you.
Good.
I got those stems boxed up for you.
Yep.
You put them through the door.
Make sure you, the best way is to give me a call.
I know. I send you an email. I'm like, I don't know why I do this. I'll call you after this. Maybe even actually on my way to Fork Food Lab. I'll call you.
Okay.
All right, you're coming over, right, Melissa?
Yeah, I'll be there. I have
It'll
tons
be
of
nice to see you in
t-shirts.
person.
I'm gonna be like, you get a t-shirt.
Hey, this is a great opportunity to get some work done. Mark, I sent you an email.
Okay.
Take a look at it. I'm trying to get that 2 pallets kind of, I'm working with Sam Miller I'm trying to work with our inventory because I've got a lot of sales ramping up and with USM, but I want to make sure that I get you your 2 pallets when you want them.
We
Um,
can do that soon.
Okay. So if you respond to the email, because I just put production orders into Sam. Like I need this many cases by this date between Native Maine, Peak Source, and Mark McBride.
Okay.
So if you could do that, that'd be great.
Just-
Mark, would you be coming down with your truck for that?
Yes.
So if you want, I could possibly move some stuff down to Auburn, or I can have it at WR Allen where you're like used to picking it up in Orland, but you let me know.
Is it easier for you to be, I mean, Orland
Easy.
works. Orland
Yeah.
works.
Orland's the best for me, but if you were coming down and you were like, hey, can I get it in like Southern Maine area? I could get it to Auburn if you needed me to.
How many pallets do you have for me?
40.
Okay.
I have about 28,000 pounds for you.
Okay. Let me reach out because I'll just so I am retiring
No.
at the end of
No.
December, okay, with the idea that
I'm so
it can't be a guarantee because that's against the law, but I'm pretty confident that they'll want me to come back, and I have to be out for 30 days before I can return. So just so you know that from January 1st to February 1st, I'll get you a personal cell phone number, but I'm not doing anything with the department for that month.
Is that like when you like are on like a work visa and you have to like leave the country for like 30 days and
No,
come back?
it's just that there's been a law in place for some time now that you can retire when you're able to and then come back just as a regular like Social Security employee. And many have done it. It's not something, but for me, it really didn't it did not make sense. I would have had to, if I just went on and got the extra that it would have made for me to work, say for another 6 or 8 years, it would end up being that it would take me till 86 to ever get back what I had lost. So it just doesn't make sense.
No.
So,
No.
I
Well, I'm happy for you. That's a good thing then. Not for
Well-
us, but for you.
well, no, it's not. I'm not. My plan is that come first part of February, everything will be just like it was. So
Okay.
Love it. I love it.
We're seeing flexibility in relationships at work here.
Many
Yeah, that's
different
great
hats.
message.
Okay, so we'll let them back in 1 minute. Do some Q&A, and then Annie, I'm just touching base with you about closing. I want to mention that this is just our second webinar in a series of 6, and do some promo for that. I don't have the registration links like exactly pulled up right now, but I'll work on that while questions are
Okay.
being asked.
Great.
And mention the impact survey. Is there anything else that you want to?
can I also give you an email address that's not for the main so that if something happened during that time, I'd like to get, I'd still like to come to them. So
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah,
Great.
you want to
Please.
write it down?
Love it. So committed, Mark.
I'm ready, Mark.
It's vineandbranchfarm@yahoo.com. So it's vineandbranchfarm@yahoo.com.
Okay. I'll add
All right,
you.
folks.
I'll add that to our contact list and keep your .gov one on there too.
Hey, Lita, you want to see what I'm learning to do?
Yes.
Oh, wait, can you see it?
No,
Oh.
it's blurred.
Blurry.
Oh, God. I'm learning to spin yarn.
Oh, I could kind of see it at the end there.
Perfect for
It's
you.
a lot harder than I thought.
So cool. Can't wait to see what you make with it.
I know. Well, I've already done like 2 spools and I'm like I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, but
Good
It's
for
you
hard
know,
to
you.
it's hard to be consistent on your size, isn't it?
it's so hard. I'm like, I had no idea. I'm like, am I just gonna use this for like yarn already made to just make myself like because that I can do. But yeah, it's really hard. And even just like I wanted to start, I was like, ooh, this camel hair is nice. She's like, don't touch that. Like, yeah, you'll never pick up the wheel again if you do that.
We'll start somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope you made a new connection or said hello to an old friend in your breakout rooms. Want to open up the floor for questions that came out of your conversations or questions that you have been holding while our panelists were presenting. So feel free to jump right in here and pipe up.
Well, it wasn't so much a question, rather just a discussion on the necessity for processors to have sufficient storage space or have access to a location that has storage space in order to have, a consistent line of products that they can send out. And I'm thinking of this. I have a few different hats, and one of my hats is a startup manager for the Lewiston Auburn Community Market. I work closely with Catherine Bessie, who is also here previously. I think she jumped off. But we're looking into the seconds market because we're going to be um, serving food, and also we have some kitchen setup, maybe 6+ kitchens for local caterers or food processors that want to rent out the kitchen. And so we're just now brainstorming what does that look like to use seconds in the food that the LACM is going to cook and serve, or to be able to sell seconds or store seconds for customers of the kitchen.
Yeah, that's a big one. Glad you're here, Catherine. And yeah, I feel like that goes back to what Ben was saying about how can you be flexible, which is really important. If you're getting inundated one year and don't have supply next year, like that frozen storage spaces becomes critical when you're trying to work with local food and seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely.
switchboard.
Hi, Catherine. I was just gonna piggyback on that because I definitely think that inconsistent like harvest timing, sporadic volumes, the high just handling of the product and the storage becomes like a huge challenge. I know just in our situation, um, is I think also from a process like point of view is like, yes, we all work together, but we also have to hold our partners accountable. So like when we were buying broccoli, we were just like taking it, right? So like we took the hit for and we paid full price for things that weren't spec, right? And I think that that's important to not do that. I think that sometimes what we do is we tend to think like, oh, it's a second, so it's it's either a grade A or B, like, and you just like put them all into that category, but it's really not. And I think that if you are a farmer and you have the ability, now sometimes you don't because you only have so many people that are on that farm, but if you have the ability to grade it A, B, C, then you can actually like know what your volume is and you can consistently kind of get an idea year over year and be able to find the segment of business that's going to work for that specific product, right? Like a C grade product is perfect for like purees and things like that, right? Grade B is going to be like perfect for processing, chopping, and then grade A is what you sell to like your restaurants and all that stuff. So I think that um again, it's like just coming up with some sort of regulate not regulations, but just getting everyone on the same page to speak the same language.
Any other reflections or questions that came out of your conversations?
This is Emily Dickinson speaking from Mountain Valley Mushrooms at Farming Fungi. And so I'm a farmer and I've got the surplus. I've worked with Mark McBride in the past when we have too much to, we've overgrown or an order has fallen through. Mark's always been able to help us out through Mountain View, which is incredible. And now we're doing our own processing in our processing kitchen and developing products. And also we do logistics where we do trucking and we deliver to Hannaford distribution centers and Whole Foods distribution centers and Market Basket distribution centers. So on the farmer side, I'm just looking to see how do I break into the community or the network of beyond Mountain View.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I have one. 'Cause
Okay.
just hi, Emily.
Hi. Good to see
Yeah,
you.
nice to see you. Just from working at Native Maine, I know what the challenges are, and so what I started to do at Native Maine, and I wish more distributors like did this, is I would basically come up with a list of accounts. So I would have, of course, Mark, right, from the prisons. I'd actually have all the prisons, including like Berlin prison, but I would have especially the schools like Portland Public, Orono, any school that was really into misfits or byproduct or whatever it is. So I would have that list. And basically, I reached out to all of my vendors and was like, whenever you have a surplus or seconds, let me know. Because it's not an item that you're going to put like on your catalog, right? It's not going to be something, it's a very like, again, because because you'll be amazed at people, they'll go and they'll just order something and they're like, oh, this isn't what I thought I ordered, because there's not a lot of like space to even like explain what the product is like on your catalog. But I think that if distributors had, a list of accounts, or if you had like, Emily, I can absolutely help you with like a list of accounts that I know for a fact like jump on those items. The problem is not everyone's like you where they have that distribution capability. They have to go through that distributor. So that's something I would do, is just I would reach out to all my vendors and say, whenever you have this, and like for instance, Commonwealth, when they were still open, when they would have their drums of halal chicken, I'd know exactly who would have to email and say, hey, we have this is available. I'm going to be getting it in this day. And basically I wouldn't bring in the product into the warehouse until it was already sold. So I think that that's what's important. It's like reaching out to your distributor and saying, hey, I have this second or this byproduct. And then they go and reach out to their list of accounts that they know are interested in that. And then when they bring it in, it's going straight out. Therefore, it's not going to be put into like a rack or cause any issues. But
Awesome. Great. Thank you for the
yeah. And
feedback.
Emily, just email me if you want a list, because I have like a whole list of accounts. Like I like that would jump on that in a second. So
Absolutely. Will do. Thank you.
Great. Other questions, thoughts, reactions here? Okay. Well, maybe we will wrap it here then. I want to thank our panelists for being here and sharing your perspectives. I loved the new connections and overlaps that were already happening in that group. Thank you to our participants. I know we have more than halved in our numbers as breakout rooms came up, but thank you all for hanging on to the bitter end here. I do want to mention that this webinar is number 2 in a series of 6. So if you are interested in these topics, actually, we have a very related to the conversation today topic at our February meeting. It's going to be all about cold storage. So come back if you want to talk more about that. I'll drop those registration links in the chat for you all.
I did already. It's all done.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm on my wrong chat here. Thank you. And yeah, we also have the impact survey here in the chat as well. That really helps us out when we're trying to demonstrate the value of this work group. Emily, do you want to say a little bit more about what you just put in the chat?
Sure. So this is our logistics flyer, and the locations where we already go to distribution centers. So like US Foods and Native Maine. So if people are, they have their product, but they don't have the logistics aspect, which I know can be a big problem in the middle of supply chain. So we are there, with our big Penske trucks, and there's plenty of room in them. So yeah.
Wow. That's
This is
so great to know about.
And Emily, this is good because so many places up in the county, like when I was at Native, it was so hard because we went there once a month, but I wanted to get them all together to be like, what else do you want? Like, we're coming up here anyways. So, like, again, this is a great opportunity, I think, even just to like, share the logistics with people that are already going up there with like empty trucks that are like, fill me up.
Exactly. Let's fill those trucks up and be as efficient as possible.
100%.
That feels like a good place just to put a plug in case folks on this call haven't heard about the local food switchboard, because we're hoping that it becomes a space where people can come to saying, hey, I have an empty truck going up, and can get some coordination support among many other things.
I'm so
But
excited for that to come.
oh, good.
Because I don't know if you read like my newsletter. I'm like, does anyone else have frozen product that wants to like join on a truck with me? Like,
Awesome.
yeah.
Hopefully we'll just be like the megaphone for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't
Right.
wait. So
Right.
excited.
We want to funnel business towards all of you existing businesses, and definitely not take it away. So just to like double down on that message.
Yeah.
And Emily, yeah, when you were talking about having, things that you want to list, and Melissa was talking about, we're going to test out how well it can list product for folks, and making sure that things are updated enough so that it's reliable information. But that is something we're going to test out. So stay tuned.
If you want help testing it, we can be the guinea pig.
I love
We
it.
do.
I love it. Great. All right, we'll get in touch with you. Thanks for sending on your info.
Yes,
Awesome.
thank you guys.
Thanks for coming too.
All right.
Great
Thanks,
meeting.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Stay warm.
Have a great rest of
Bye.
your
Thanks,
Tuesday.
panelists.
All right. How do I stop recording?
Yeah.